I'm talking about workplace discrimination and the anti-trans executive orders of President Trump. So to explain the executive orders and what they do and how they affect you in the workplace, we need to go back to 2019 and the United States Supreme Court decision of Bostock versus Clayton County, which considered the question of discrimination on the basis of sex. When you think of discrimination on the basis of sex, people often think about a woman losing out on a job opportunity because of a preference for a man in the role. And the question the court answered was whether sex discrimination includes gender and sexual orientation. And the court held that it does, that an employer violates federal anti-discrimination law when they fire or penalize someone in some way for being gay or trans. And the way the law works on this is that the law was passed, in this case, it was Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. It was passed by Congress in 1964, signed into law by President Johnson. And the Supreme Court, which is the final authority on federal law, interpreted Title VII protection from discrimination to include gender and sexual orientation. President Trump's executive order cannot invalidate the law and cannot invalidate established legal precedent. So how does this anti-trans order challenge that law and that precedent? Well, this executive order makes the policy of the administration to recognize two sexes, male and female, and it rejects the ability that individuals have to transition from one sex to another. It also refuses to recognize non-binary people. The order says that individuals have the right to express the binary nature of sex to single-sex spaces in workplaces and federally funded entities, and also requires the Attorney General, the Department of Labor, the EEOC, to prioritize the investigations and litigation to enforce these rights. So here is where Title VII protections are going to clash with state laws that prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. So an individual might say they have a right not to use a coworker's pronouns. They have a right to not share a bathroom with a transgender colleague. And those arguments themselves may constitute harassment or discrimination on the basis of state or municipal laws. This executive order is at odds with the Bostock decision, and it's going to create an immediate challenge for the federal government as an employer, the largest employer in the United States with nearly 3 million employees. Another important point here that the Human Rights Campaign makes is that discrimination on the basis of sex in Title VII covers sexual harassment, it covers sex stereotyping, and this interpretation of the law has been on the books for decades. We take for granted, as they point out, that a person can go into the workplace and wear what they like to wear, their decision to work outside the home, that how they present themselves. These can be protected under the law, under Title VII. And now it looks like they're aiming to be up in the air if the president has his way. Similarly, there's an attempt to add a bathroom exemption into Title VII, which directs the Attorney General, the Secretary of Labor, the United States Equal Employment Opportunity Commission to enforce Title VII so that access to bathrooms is consistent with this policy, as in only male or female, and transgender individuals would have to use restrooms consistent with their birth sex. And there's also an attempt to enforce this rule in the federal workforce. Additionally, federal funding around contracts, grants, anything that promotes, in the president's words, gender ideology, or even collecting data on gender identity is done. Agencies cannot fund through contracts, through grants, anything that promotes gender ideology. And there is a rollback of guidance toolkits from the Department of Justice, the Department of Education, the Attorney General, and the EEOC on LGBTQ+ issues. So while my focus here today is on workplaces uh, and the impact of these executive orders on workplaces. What's clear from this bouquet of executive orders and other guidance is that the administration is seeking to remove established protections for trans and non-binary people. Uh, and that includes attempting to eliminate gender affirming care for children, looking to eliminate federal funding for anything related to gender identity in schools, and to roll back a revised interpretation of Title IX, which is the 1972 law that prohibits sex discrimination in educational programs that get federal money. Uh, that interpretation had included protection on the basis of gender identity and sexual orientation from harassment or exclusion.